Michael J. Totten, is that right?
Totten.
Totten. Very good. Michael J. Totten is an award-winning journalist and prize-winning author whose very first book, The Road to Fatima Gate, won the Washington Institute Book Prize. His novel Resurrection has been optioned for film. He has taken road trips to war zones, sneaked into police states under false pretenses, dodged incoming rockets and mortar fire, stayed in some of the worst hotels ever built anywhere, slipped past the hostile side of a front line, been accused of being a spy, received death threats from terrorists, and has been mugged by the police in Egypt. When he's not doing or writing about these things, he writes novels. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the New Republic, among numerous other publications. He's a contributing editor at World Affairs and City Journal. He has reported widely from the Middle East, the former Soviet Union, Latin America, and the Balkans. A former resident of Beirut, he lives in Oregon with his wife and 2 cats. Mark?
So he just mostly listed what I do my day job. This is a zombie novel. This has nothing to do with all the foreign travel that he just described. So this book, it's Resurrection. It's my 5th book, first book in a series of 3, and it has been optioned for film. So now's your chance to read the book before the movie comes out. And books are always better than the movie anyway. So yeah, it begins after the zombie apocalypse has already killed off most of the population of the world. It's not about how it develops; it's the aftermath. And the series as a whole has an epic sweep, but the first book focuses mostly on just a handful of characters. And ostensibly, the main character is a woman named Annie, who we meet her on the first page, and she has partial amnesia. She doesn't remember the events that destroyed the world. She later does, and when her memories come back, we realize that she has a terrible secret that could change everything, but she can't tell anybody what it is. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You want to know what it is? You want to know what it is, you have to read the book. So ostensibly she's the main character, but she's not my favorite character. My favorite character is actually Parker. He's not the most likable character in the book at all. He's actually the least likable character, but he's, I think, the most interesting character. And so the scene that I'm going to read from is about him. Parker had been married once, met his future wife at a trendy cafe named Spinoza in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood. It was the kind of place Parker always hated, not only because he didn't fit in there, but because it attracted the kinds of people he wished never colonized his neighborhood to begin with: the young, the hip, the beautiful, and the money. Ballard used to be an honest and slightly gritty place for men who worked at the docks, the ship logs, who made things with their hands. It was never intended for soft people who lived in undeserved luxury and made boatloads of cash clicking away on their laptops. The only reason he went into Spinoza's that day, this is a flashback by the way, before the zombie apocalypse. The only reason he went into Spinoza's that day, at all, was because he needed the bathroom. When he saw a young woman sitting there by herself with her newspaper and a latte, he couldn't help himself. He decided to order one too and see if he could gin up the nerve to take the empty table next to her. There was something about it. They couldn't quite figure out what it was. Not even after they married could he figure out what it was. She was attractive, sure, but not the most attractive he'd ever seen. She seemed friendly and approachable enough, though he had no idea why he'd think that since she was just sitting there reading the paper. There was just something gravitational about her, like she'd been engineered just for him. He ordered awkwardly at the counter. He'd never had a latte, a cappuccino, or an Americano. He didn't even know what they were. But he couldn't just say, "I'll have a coffee." They didn't have regular coffee in those kinds of places. The pretty woman with the newspaper sat far enough from the counter that she couldn't hear him fumble his order. Thank heaven for that, or he wouldn't have sat next to her. She looked so peaceful and content, so at ease in the world, as she flipped strands of her hair over her ear. He didn't intend to hit on her or ask her out for a date. He just wanted to enjoy the pleasure of her attention even if it only lasted a couple of seconds. She sat by herself at the table for 2. He sat next to her at another table for 2 and placed his drink in front of her. It looked like a dessert. He expected it to taste like one too, like coffee meringue pie or something. Normally he drank plain old coffee black, but the creamy and bitter goodness in his mug despite being foofy and gay, was outstanding. Wow, we thought this exists? This coffee's extraordinary, he said. Isn't it? The woman sitting next to him said. The corners of her eyes crinkled up when she smiled. God, Parker thought he loved this woman. He didn't know why, he just did. Her name was Holly, and she was a regular at Spinoza's. She had gone to school with the cafe owners. He told her he was new to fancy coffee, and she seemed delighted to explain all the options. They were so very different, but they were married in less than a year. He built cabinets for a living. She worked in an office downtown as a paralegal. His friends were working class. Hers were professional. He loved the outdoors. She enjoyed fancy meals out. He drank beer. She liked red wine. Once in a while, he embarrassed her when they went out with her friends. And he knew he seemed a little rough around the edges in mixed company, but she loved him and he couldn't imagine living without her. She had a soft and gentle soul and seemed to appreciate his brusque masculine qualities. Until one day he hit her. He didn't mean to. Really, he didn't. It just happened. They were arguing about money, which was stupid because they both made plenty. He wanted a motorcycle. He could afford it. She wanted to spend the money on grand kitchen counters instead. She might have talked him into it too, but instead she said she was tired of being a slave to his lower class lifestyle. He never hit anybody before. He looked like the type of guy who'd been in a couple fights, but he hadn't. He didn't hit her too hard. It was really more like a slap. He didn't strike her with a closed fist, didn't break any bones, didn't make her bleed, didn't even leave a mark that lasted more than 5 minutes. But he did strike her cheek, and he'd never forget the sound or the look on her face when he did it. Her entire life shattered in an instant. She'd never forgive him, not in her heart, and he knew it. He could not have been sorrier. That slap hurt him more than it hurt her. It sounded ludicrous when he said so, and she screamed that it was the most outrageous thing she'd ever heard, but it was true. It changed him as a person. It sentenced him to be a different kind of man for the rest of his life, the kind of man who hit women, a domestic abuser, a wife beater. He never did it again, nor would he ever. No, really he wouldn't, but he would spend the rest of his days as a man who had once smacked a woman. Eventually she could look at him again. And a little while later she could talk to him again. And eventually she even had sex with him one last time, but it ended in tears. And at that moment he knew it was over. She never slept with him again, never even hugged him again. She left a few months later and said she was sorry but she wouldn't be back. She cried when she left, and she even said that she'd miss him, but she was true to her word. She never came back. That was 2 years ago. Parker thought about her every day since. After the plague swept the world, he worried about her so hard he vomited. What happened to her? Was she alive? Did she get bitten? Was a distorted version of her out there somewhere, diseased and warped beyond recognition? What would he do if she came at him on the street, baring her teeth? Would he shoot her? Would he smash into her skull with a crowbar? Would he smash in her face if he had to?